What if you only needed one GLP-1 shot per year? Amgen's MariTide is trying to make that real. It works differently from every other GLP-1 drug, and the data so far is surprising. MariTide is the brand name for maridebart. It is an antibody-based therapy, not a peptide. That distinction matters. Current GLP-1 drugs like semaglutide and tirzepatide are peptides. They degrade over days, which is why you inject them weekly. An antibody can persist in your body for weeks to months. That is the foundation of the long dosing interval. But the really unusual thing about MariTide is its mechanism. Every GLP-1 drug on the market activates the GLP-1 receptor. MariTide does that too, but it also blocks the GIP receptor. That is the opposite of tirzepatide, which activates both GLP-1 and GIP. MariTide activates GLP-1 and antagonizes GIP. Why would you want to block GIP? The reasoning goes like this. GP is a hormone that promotes fat storage. In people with obesity and insulin resistance, GP signaling may be overactive. Activating GP, as tirzepatide does, appears to improve metabolic flexibility and enhance weight loss in many patients. But a subset of patients, particularly those with significant insulin resistance, may respond better to GIP blockade. The idea is that blocking GIP reduces the fat storage signal while activating GLP-1 provides the satiety signal. Two effects, one direction. Amgen released Phase 2 data in late 2025. Patients received MariTide at intervals ranging from monthly to quarterly. Weight loss at 12 months ranged from about 14 to 20% depending on dose and dosing interval. The highest dose at monthly intervals produced roughly 20% weight loss. Quarterly dosing produced about 14 to 16%. These numbers are competitive with semaglutide and tirzepatide at similar time points, though direct head-to-head comparisons do not exist yet. The safety profile showed some differences. Nausea and vomiting were reported, similar to other GLP-1s, but appeared to resolve faster after each dose, possibly because the antibody has a slower onset of action than peptide drugs. Injection site reactions were more common than with peptide GLP-1s, which makes sense given the larger molecule size. No new safety signals emerged in the Phase 2 data, but the trial was relatively small at about 400 participants. The dosing interval claim is the headline. Amgen has discussed the possibility of extending to twice yearly or even annual dosing based on the antibody's pharmacokinetics. The half-life of MariTide in Phase 2 data was about 3 to 4 weeks. That means detectable drug levels persist for months after a single injection. Whether annual dosing produces sufficient clinical effect is an open question. Phase 3 trials are being designed with dosing intervals up to quarterly, with annual as a potential future extension. There are questions that matter for patients. Will insurance cover a drug you take 4 times a year versus one you take weekly? How do you manage side effects when the drug is in your system for months? If you have a reaction, you cannot just stop taking it like you can with a weekly injection. The long half-life is an advantage for convenience, but a potential liability for adverse events. MariTide is not available yet. Phase 3 is expected to start in mid-2026. If trials succeed, the earliest possible FDA filing would be 2028. The once-a-year GLP-1 is not here, but the once-a-quarter GLP-1 might be closer than you think. Talk with your clinician before making any medication changes. For plain language GLP-1 updates, visit theglpspot.com.